When LuoFeng, his parents and his brother gathered together, Mingyue sector became lively again. This was because the chairman and the 3 chiefs from the main sector were about to arrive. Chief Instructor Wu Tong was waiting with a few dozen fighters. How come the chairman and the 3 chiefs are all here today? It's rare for the 4 giants to come to our sector together, the fighters discussed. They're here. Wu Tong raised his head and looked towards the sky. Everyone quieted down and looked towards the sky. A flowing light flew through the sky and then slowed down. It turned into a dark blue disc-shaped fighter jet that hovered above Mingyue sector. It began to descend. Go, let's go welcome the chairman. Wu Tong led a few dozen fighters to welcome them. As for the families of the other fighters, they were forbidden from approaching. They were here to welcome the chairman and the 3 chiefs, so how could they just stand around and watch? Voila! The hatch opened and a flight of stairs automatically extended out. Chairman Zhou, who was dressed in black, led the way and the 3 chiefs followed behind him. They all walked down the stairs. Greetings to the chairman and the 3 chiefs. Wu Tong bowed. Greetings to the chairman and the 3 chiefs. The fighters all bowed. Quite a few family members of the fighters were extremely excited as they discussed in low voices. These are the 4 giants of the Dojo of Limits in Jiang-Nan headquarter city. It's hard to even see one of them. Okay, Zhou Zheng Yong nodded. The group of fighters held their breaths. Just like when Wu Tong brought LuoFeng to meet Chief Zhu Getao, they were all extremely respectful. One can understand. The difference in status between a chief instructor of a citadel and a chief instructor of an entire headquarter city is huge. And don't even talk about comparing it to the chairman. In front of the chairman and the 3 chiefs, all the fighters were extremely reserved. Examiner Luo, are you home? Smiled Zhou Zheng Yong as he asked. Silence. Wu Tong and the few dozen fighters froze. Examiner Luo? Who is this Examiner Luo? Luo? Examiner Luo? Wu Tong stared. It's Examiner LuoFeng, smiled Zhou Zheng Yong. He didn't dare to say, that kid LuoFeng out loud. LuoFeng is his direct superior, and his strength was evaluated as an invincible wargod by the highest level of the Dojo of Limits. How can an intermediate level wargod like him, Zhou Zheng Yong, mess with him? LuoFeng? Inspector Luo? Wu Tong and the rest were dumbfounded. Zhu Getao, who was on the side, laughed. The world headquarters has sent an order. Wargod Luo Feng has officially become the examiner of our Jiang-Nan headquarter city's Dojo of Limits headquarters. We came here this time to pay our respects to Inspector Luo. LuoFeng, oh, Examiner Luo is at home with his family. Wu Tong's reaction was the fastest. He immediately replied, President, supervisors, should we notify the supervisor? I'll inform them myself. Zhou Zheng Yong smiled and dialed the number. Wu Tong and a group of martial artists stared at Zhou Zheng Yong. The call went through. Oh, Inspector Luo, I'm Zhou Zheng Yong. Zhou Zheng Yong smiled and said sincerely, I'm already in Mingyue district. There are 3 supervisors next to me. There's no rush. We'll be waiting for Inspector Luo here. After hanging up, Zhou Zheng Yong looked at Wu Tong and smiled. Wu Tong, let's go. Let's go take a look at Yangzhou's limit hall. Yes, President. Wu Tong hurriedly followed. The entire Mingyue district quickly boiled over. News of LuoFeng becoming the new Jiangnan headquarter city's Dojo of Limits examiner spread like wildfire. Other than those who weren't in the district, everyone knew. Everyone was extremely excited. After thinking about the fighter jet from before, they realized. No wonder LuoFeng can buy a fighter jet. So he became an examiner. Call him an examiner. Don't call him LuoFeng. The examiner is only 20 this year. If we count his age, he's only 19. He's not married yet. Does he have a girlfriend yet? I've never heard of one. There are people who want to get close to LuoFeng's family, people who want to find LuoFeng a wife, all sorts of things. Since he's an examiner. To become an examiner, one must first be an advanced level wargod. And among the advanced level wargods he has a certain amount of fame. These kinds of people are all amazing in the world. If anyone has a relative who marries an examiner, they'll have a huge advantage in the future. In a guest room of the Dojo of Limits. There were a total of 5 people in the guest room. The 4 big shots of Jiangnan headquarter city's Dojo of Limits and LuoFeng. Right now LuoFeng was sitting on a chair. When he walked from his home to the dojo, the attitudes of some of the neighbors and family members of the fighters in the district surprised LuoFeng. They were all extremely passionate, and some even called him Examiner Luo. LuoFeng immediately understood. His identity was exposed. However, he will be exposed one day, so LuoFeng was mentally prepared. Examiner Luo, let me introduce you. Chairman Zhou Zheng Yong laughed. These 3 are the heads of our Jiangnan city's Dojo of Limits. This is Zhu Getao, this is Wang Kufan, and this is Yu Sun. Greetings to the examiner, Zhu Getao, Wang Kufan, and Yu Sun all stood up. No need to be polite, make yourselves at home. All of you are my seniors. Senior Zhu Getao helped me back then, so I can't thank you enough, said LuoFeng sincerely. He's even met a few existences surpassing the wargod level, and even met the world's strongest fighter, Hong. Looking at Zhou Zheng Yong, Zhu Getao, and the others, LuoFeng was much calmer and more casual. After a few minutes of conversation, LuoFeng's casual attitude made the 4 tycoons less nervous. Looks like, although this young man was in a high position, he did not have that kind of arrogance. The 4 magnates breathed a sigh of relief. President Zhou, said LuoFeng, of course I'll do what an examiner has to do. As for Jiangnan headquarter city, the Dojo of Limits affairs will continue as usual. I'm young and don't understand, so I'm too lazy to care." After hearing this, Chairman Zhou and the others were even happier. "However, I hope that none of you will do anything out of line." LuoFeng's expression became serious. "Since headquarters gave me the position of an examiner, I have to report to my superiors." Although he said that. Actually, LuoFeng hasn't even read the email about the examiner's responsibilities that the Dojo of Limits sent to his mailbox. "Don't worry, Inspector Luo. We won't make things difficult for you." Zhou Zheng Yong immediately guaranteed, "If anyone goes overboard, I'll teach them a lesson even without Inspector Luo's instruction." "It's not that serious," laughed LuoFeng. "I'm an easy person to talk to. It's just that I have a bad temper sometimes. As a young man, please bear with me. I have something that I need Chairman Zhou's help with," said LuoFeng. "Please speak, Examiner Luo." LuoFeng took in a deep breath and slowly said, "My parents were separated from their family during the Grand Nirvana period. I want President Zhou to help me find my parents' cousins, as well as my parents' elders who are still alive." Although his parents were both orphans, Zhou Wenxin was still a young man. Back then things had been chaotic. His parents had been very young. Who knew if his grandparents were still alive? This? Frowned Chairman Zhou, "This is a bit more difficult." LuoFeng frowned. Chairman Zhou continued, "The main thing is that many cities were attacked by monsters during that period of time. The internet was paralyzed, a lot of information was lost, and many people's identities were unknown. So our Dojo of Limits can't investigate, so we can only investigate through the Chinese government. The Chinese government's information on its citizens is quite detailed." "No problem asking the government to help, right?" asked LuoFeng. "To the Chinese government, Examiner Luo's face is much more important than mine." "Your words are more useful," laughed Zhou Zheng Yong. "Yeah. However, I'll tell them later. Once they know that this is for Examiner Luo's help, they'll definitely put in a lot of effort." Invincible Wargod. "To one of the 5 great countries, China, it's extremely attractive." "Yeah," nodded LuoFeng. "The examiner just took office. According to the rules, we have to hold a large welcoming banquet for the examiner. When the time comes, we'll invite all the important figures in Jiang-Nan city, including politicians, businessmen, fighters and so on. Even some important figures in China will probably come," said Zhou Zheng Yong. "I wonder when does the examiner think we should hold it?" LuoFeng froze. Taking office as an examiner is a big deal, so of course it has to be grand. What's the point of hiding? LuoFeng knew that this was the rule. "How about this, since I just got home, I'll be quiet for a while." "Yeah. On the 1st of next month, which is September 1st, we'll hold the banquet and welcome all the guests," said LuoFeng. Returning home in glory. The first day back in Mingyue sector was too lively. At night, LuoFeng, Qinggu, Zhangku and many other friends gathered for dinner. It was 11 o'clock at night. Everything was quiet. LuoFeng sat on the sofa in the audiovisual room and held a cup of tea as he looked at the large screen on the wall of the audiovisual room. On the screen, this mail from headquarters described the many responsibilities of an examiner. "Yeah. That's pretty easy," nodded LuoFeng. Beside him, a dark blue helmet was placed on the sofa. LuoFeng picked up the dark blue helmet. When using this consciousness sensor, at home the most important thing is protect yourself, because once you put on the dark blue helmet, your consciousness will enter the virtual space. If someone tries to assassinate you, it'll be troublesome. However, no one dares to do that in the fighter sector of the headquarter city. But the instructions still remind you to be careful of your own safety. This consciousness sensor, helmet also has a security system that can detect if someone is entering the surrounding area. Other people are afraid of safety, but I'm not," laughed LuoFeng. LuoFeng smiled and a black membrane immediately extended from his body. With the protection of the black god set, what's there to worry about? Safe range 5m x 5m. LuoFeng set it up so that the door and windows were locked. Once someone enters the safe range, LuoFeng's consciousness will be automatically kicked out of the virtual space. Whoosh. LuoFeng directly put on the helmet, and the black god set covered the dark blue helmet. He sat cross-legged on the floor like a black statue. Entering the virtual space. The Palace of Wargods is in the virtual space, so the spirit reader basics can only be read in the virtual space. This was a quiet, gigantic room. LuoFeng, who was wearing a simple white robe, suddenly appeared in this room. What a huge room, LuoFeng couldn't help but to exclaim. With a glance, the length of the entire room was over 50 meters, the width was around 20 meters and the height was 5 meters. In other words, the area of this room was over 1,000 square meters. In the center of the room was a gigantic round bed that had a diameter of 3 meters. In front of the bed was an indoor swimming pool that was 10 meters wide and 20 meters long. Bed, swimming pool, desk, chairs, luxurious dining table, reclining chairs, training area with yoga mats. The gigantic empty room that was over 1,000 square meters was divided into many sections in an orderly manner. LuoFeng let out a smile. "Welcome, Wargod Luo Feng," an electronic voice suddenly rang, scaring LuoFeng. "This is your private room in the Palace of Wargods. Other than yourself, no one else can enter your room," the electronic voice echoed around the room. The electronic voice echoed in the room. "In the Wargod Palace, you can order whatever you want to eat or drink. There are many delicious dishes that can't be found in reality." LuoFeng froze? Selling food and drinks? There are 2 books on your desk. One is Palace of Wargods Rules, and the other is Spirit Reader Basics. Have fun in the Palace of Wargods, the electronic voice disappeared. Have fun, laughed LuoFeng. Is this Palace of Wargods a place for Wargods to have fun? The desk was closest to the window. The entire southern side of the room was filled with gigantic floor-to-ceiling windows. LuoFeng stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked at the beautiful scenery outside. Wonderland. LuoFeng looked outside through the window. The outside was vast and boundless. Clouds filled the air, and the sun shone through the clouds, reflecting 7 different colors of light. It was beautiful and dreamy. Even though he knew that this was a virtual space, this 100% virtual space gave him the same feeling as reality, which made him shocked. Let's take a look at the Spirit Reader Basics Instruction Manual first. LuoFeng walked back to the desk. There were 2 books on the desk. One of the instruction manuals had a black cover and the words Palace of Wargods rules were written on it. The other book's cover was black with specks of starlight, as if it was as mysterious as the starry sky. On it were 6 large words, Spirit Reader Basics. This instruction manual is worth 3 stars. It's even more expensive than an Emperor-level auto jet. LuoFeng picked up the instruction manual and started reading. Psychic power originates from a person's spirit and soul. The body is the foundation of the spirit. Psychic power can only be nurtured in the human body and become strong. Because of the special relationship between the physical body and the psychic power, once the psychic power touched the body of a human or animal, it would directly pass through. Therefore, psychic power cannot directly attack the enemy's body. It must rely on a medium, such as a sword or concealed weapon. Seeing this, LuoFeng couldn't help but to nod. Indeed. For example, when he was running, he used his spirit power to add external force, which was usually used on the shield, the bottom of the boots, the arm guards and other objects, but not on his clothes. What? This was because, from a molecular point of view, the combat uniform still had a lot of holes. When the tiny particles of psychic power were applied to the clothes, many of them would naturally pass through the holes and through the human body. It could exert a certain amount of force. However, it was probably only a tenth of the strongest. On the other hand, it was 100% effective when used on shields, boots and other places. Spiritual force can be both real and fake. Real can contain a shocking amount of power, control objects through the air, and kill the enemy from 100 meters away. Fake can silently enter a person's soul and kill the enemy without a sound. Gather without a sound, change without a trace. All spirit readers are split into 3 types. The first type, control objects through the air to kill the enemy. The second type, enter the enemy's consciousness and attack. The third type, taming. LuoFeng continued to read. About half of the book was introduced in detail to the first type, control objects through the air to kill the enemy. The remaining half mainly described the second type, enter the enemy's consciousness to attack. As for the third type, taming, it was described the least. When LuoFeng carefully read the first type, control objects through the air to kill the enemy, a paragraph of text made his eyes light up. Spirit readers who specialize in controlling objects, when their strength increases, can be split into spiritual force, weapons, and technique. This book mainly talks about technique. A spirit reader's strength, in terms of technique, mainly depends on how many weapons he can control at the same time and how much power he can maintain. For example, a spirit reader, an intermediate-level Wargod level spirit reader, can control a throwing knife with a force of up to 160,000 kilograms. He can control 5 throwing knives and each one is 160,000 kilograms. That's a total of 800,000 kilograms of force. Then what if he can control 10 throwing knives at the highest level? That's a force of 1.6 million kilograms. What if I can control 20 daggers at the same time, and each dagger reaches its maximum value? That's a force of 3.2 million kilograms. If he can maintain his strongest attack and control more throwing knives, then this spirit reader will naturally be able to unleash more power. Next, I'll focus on how to control more throwing knives and maintain the power of each throwing knife at the highest level. After reading this, LuoFeng was completely stunned. Yes, control the number of throwing knives. That phantom demon Catalan is only an intermediate-level Wargod level spirit reader, yet he can control 9 daggers at the same time, and each dagger has its strongest attack. And LuoFeng, who's already at the peak of the advanced level Wargod level, can only control 6 throwing knives. The number of throwing knives he can control is too low. Each of my throwing knives can maintain a force of over 500,000 kilograms. 6 of them is over 3 million kilograms of force. If I can control 10 throwing knives, over 5 million kilograms? Controlling 20 throwing knives would be over 10 million kilograms. Holy! Even existences surpassing the Wargod level probably can't block that. LuoFeng was extremely excited. As he read, LuoFeng realized just how difficult it is to maintain the power of each throwing knife at the highest level. To be able to control 6 throwing knives without any special training means that LuoFeng is quite talented. Phantom Demon Catalan trained for dozens of years and only managed to reach the level of controlling 9 throwing knives. However, Phantom Demon Catalan didn't have the Spirit Reader Basics instruction manual to guide him, so he took quite a few detours. On Earth, the number of spirit readers who can control more than 10 throwing knives doesn't even exceed one hand. 20 throwing knives? This is a level that all spirit readers on Earth have to look up to. No wonder this instruction manual is worth 3 stars. And I can only see it in the virtual space. LuoFeng became more and more excited as he looked. Looks like it's hard to raise the level of each throwing knife. But after all, with this cultivation method, as long as I continue to cultivate step by step, I will definitely improve. After reading the Controlled Object Attack section, LuoFeng's blood boiled. He continued reading the Mental Attack chapter. Oh. In my own sea of consciousness, my spirit power will increase by 1 level. And when your spiritual force seeps into someone else's realm of consciousness, not only will it not be boosted, but it will be suppressed by the opponent's realm of consciousness and become weaker. LuoFeng mumbled, in other words, if you want to go head on and kill the opponent, you'll have to use your spiritual force to do so. The strength of his spirit power is at least 3 levels higher than his opponent's. When an advanced level Wargod Spirit Reader's spirit force enters the consciousness of a beginner level Wargod Spirit Reader, it will be suppressed by the consciousness of a beginner level Wargod Spirit Reader. On the other hand, the spirit force of an advanced level Wargod Spirit Reader will have an amplification effect. Only 3 floors higher. Only then could they be killed. What? A normal fighter's spiritual force is also very strong? LuoFeng was shocked when he saw the description below. Ordinary martial artists had no way of telekinesis. However, that doesn't mean they're mentally weak. In reality, powerful fighters mostly have strong willpower and mental strength. For example, an advanced level Wargod fighter also has a small amount of spiritual force in his consciousness. In terms of quality, it's not much weaker than an advanced level spirit reader. However, the difference in quantity is too great. Mental attacks are very complicated. Clearly, people on Earth aren't very skilled in this area. There are a total of 18 attack methods in the instruction manual. There's Dream, Phantom, Spiritual All, Soul Shaker. Many famous secret techniques. There's a total of 18. The method of killing someone is using a secret technique to distract the opponent and then telekinesis to kill the opponent. First use a secret technique, then telekinesis? LuoFeng sighed to himself. He was a bit disappointed with this so-called mental attack. However, LuoFeng is still preparing to learn these 18 secret techniques. He continued to read the 3rd chapter, the Monster Taming chapter. According to the book, one can tame monsters with spiritual force. As of now, there are a total of 9 spirit readers on Earth who have successfully tamed monsters. However, there's only one method recorded. Telepathy. A very indirect method of befriending a monster. LuoFeng closed the book. LuoFeng let out a long sigh and walked to the window on the side. He looked at the endless sea of clouds outside. 3 stars, so expensive. LuoFeng let out a smile. However, it's worth it. After reading it, LuoFeng understood why Hong valued this instruction manual so much. You can say that after reading the Spirit Reader basics, he has a complete understanding of a Spirit Reader's training. There's a method to increase the number of throwing knives in the book, as well as the 18 secret techniques for mental attacks. The value of these secret techniques alone was immeasurable. He didn't know how Hong managed to gather all of this. If I had this instruction manual a year ago, then I would probably be twice as strong as I am right now. Then training to this point, his power is probably twice my current level. LuoFeng looked outside the window at the cloud sea, extremely happy. Work hard on your training. According to the book, an advanced level Wargod Spirit Reader can control a certain number of throwing knives. Once they reach a certain level, they can directly break through and become an existence surpassing the Wargod level. I'll focus on controlling objects and support it with a few spiritual techniques, thought LuoFeng to himself. Work hard. Now that he's an examiner, he can relax a bit and focus on training in this controlling object technique. Who knows when he'll be able to break through to the Wargod level. Time to go see the other Wargods. All the Wargods on Earth are in this Palace of Wargods. I wonder how many there are. LuoFeng was curious just how many Wargods are there on Earth. LuoFeng stood in front of his desk and opened the black cover of the rules of the Palace of Wargods. There was only one piece of paper inside. Welcome to the Palace of Wargods. The Palace of Wargods was created by the combined efforts of the first Chairman Hong and the second Chairman Thunder God. All of the Wargods and existences surpassing the Wargod level are members of the Palace of Wargods. The management level of the Palace of Wargods is the Palace of Wargods Council. Only existences surpassing the Wargod level have the right to become a representative. And the council has 5 chairmen. They are the first chairman, the second chairman, all the way to the 5th chairman. These 5 people are the 5 most powerful fighters on Earth. In other words, the Palace of Wargods is split into 3 levels: normal members, representatives, and chairmen. In the Palace of Wargods there is a market, auction hall, arena plaza, tower of trials. There are many functions waiting for you to discover them yourself. Just this short piece of paper. After reading it, LuoFeng laughed and walked towards his closet. He changed into a set of casual clothes and left his room. Following the corridor, they naturally arrived at the outer wall of the Palace of Gods of War. This outer wall corridor was 9 meters wide. Standing on the wall-like corridor, they leaned on the wall and looked down. Below was the gigantic plaza of the Palace of Wargods. There were a total of 9 arenas in the plaza. What about outside the plaza? Rumble, the dark waves crashed against the plaza's walls again and again. The gigantic Palace of Wargods was like a gigantic palace floating on an endless black ocean. Who designed this? On the other side of the Palace of Wargods are endless clouds. And on this side is an endless ocean. LuoFeng shook his head. Hello. A voice rang from behind. LuoFeng turned his head. The one who spoke was a tall white man. He smiled as he extended his hand. My name is Fra Luo Di. Luo Feng smiled and shook his hand as he complimented, "Your Chinese is not bad. Thank you for your compliment." Fra Luo Di smiled. "Mr. Luo, you seem quite young, and this is the first time I've seen you in the Palace of Wargods. I Fra Luo Di don't talk about other things, but I know 99% of the Wargods on Earth. Mr. Luo probably hasn't been here many times." Luo looked at the person in front of him with surprise. Know 99% of the gods of war on Earth? Perhaps it was an exaggeration, but it also showed how confident the person in front of him was. "This is my first time here." Luo smiled. "Oh, the first time." Vladi raised his eyebrows, and a mysterious smile appeared on his face. "There will be a surprise later." Surprise? While they were talking, Luo and Vladi, these two war gods, had already reached the spiral staircase leading to the first floor. Luo and Vladi were on the third floor, which was around 10 meters away from the first floor. The height of the first floor was around 30 meters, and the length and width of the first floor exceeded 100 meters. This hall was much bigger than an average school's playground. In such a large hall on the first floor, there were a large number of sofas and chairs. There were at least a few thousand chairs, and now there were about 1,000 people sitting in groups of 2s and 3s, drinking and chatting. So many war gods. Luo couldn't help but hold his breath. To be able to enter the Palace of Wargods, one had to be at least a war god. And the largest number of war gods he's seen since he was young was in the elite training camp, where he only saw a few dozen war gods. And in Jiang-Nan headquarter city, it's rare to even meet a single war god. Mr. Luo, war gods are usually scattered all over the place, so it's rare to meet other war gods. So many war gods often come to the Palace of Wargods to drink and chat, which counts as making friends, said Vladi. Okay, Luo couldn't help but to nod. This is the gathering place of all the war gods on Earth. As they walked down the spiral staircase, Luo looked around. In the entire hall below, other than the war gods chatting, there were also a few extremely beautiful waiters. There were about 100 of them, and they served these war gods. And on the wall of the hall, there was a gigantic display screen. On it, there was a number, 3,515. What does this 3,515 mean? Luo was confused. At this time, Luo and Vladi also walked down the stairs. When Luo stepped on the shiny floor tiles of the first floor, the entire first floor suddenly darkened. The originally soft and comfortable lighting suddenly became dim. The soothing music from before also instantly disappeared. Luo was confused, but Vladi let out a smile on his face. All the war gods that were chatting all looked towards the stairs. After glancing past Vladi, they all looked towards Luo. Dang. Along with a crisp sound that seemed to make one's soul tremble, a loud, passionate and joyous music filled the entire hall. The music echoed throughout the entire hall. In this luxurious hall, close to 1,000 war gods from all over the world stood up. Some of them even started clapping. Among them, there are those that work for the government. Among them, there are special people that hide in the darkness. Among them, there are mercenaries that fight on the edge of life and death. Among them, there are those that live in seclusion, enjoy life and teach their disciples. They are the most elite group of people in human society. They are the wealthiest group of people, and they stand at the top of the pyramid of human society. A faint light shone on LuoFeng's body below. The Palace of Wargods welcomes a new war god. His name is Luo. A rough voice that sounded like a god's rang. At the same time that the voice echoed, a 3D hologram appeared above the hall. On the hologram, large 3D words appeared. Name, Luo. Nationality, China. Level, Wargod, Advanced. 3 simple lines of words. Each word was 3D as if they were carved from stone. They floated in mid-air. The total number of wargods in human society has increased by 1, reaching 3,516. At the same time that the thunder-like voice echoed in the hall, the number, 3,515, on the gigantic display on the wall jumped to 3,516. At the same time, the passionate and joyous music started to weaken until it couldn't be heard anymore. The light that shone on LuoFeng's body also disappeared. Everything returned to normal. This? Luo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked towards Vladi beside him. This Vladi definitely knew, but he didn't warn him first. The virtual space automatically introduces and welcomes every wargod the first time they arrive, Vladi smiled. Who would have thought that Mr. Luo, even though you're a new wargod, you're actually an advanced level wargod? It's really admirable. And in the Palace of Wargods, close to 1,000 wargods sat in their seats and started discussing with their friends. Quite a few people were discussing this Luo. There are a total of 3,516 wargods on Earth, and only a few hundred advanced level wargods. It is indeed rare for a new wargod to be an advanced level wargod. Luo. A few voices sounded, and 6 silhouettes walked over from a chair in the far corner. Luo looked over in shock. He actually recognized all 6 of them. These 6 people are all teachers from the elite training camp. Even though his teacher Jiang wasn't there, he recognized the others. One of them was Wargod Yang Hui, who brought him to the training camp. Teacher Yang, Teacher Wei Te, yelled Luo. What teacher? You've already graduated and the one who's actually teaching you is Jiang. Just call us by our names, laughed Yang Hui. The other teachers from the elite training camp also laughed as they nodded. No matter how strong a disciple is, they still have to respect their teachers. However, Every student in the training camp only has one teacher to teach them. LuoFeng was taught by Jiang-Feng. Now that LuoFeng has graduated and his status is high, only Jiang-Feng can be called teacher. Even though the others know LuoFeng, they haven't taught him, so there's no need for that. LuoFeng, since you've come here, I'll introduce you according to the old rules, laughed Yang Hui enthusiastically. The other teachers also laughed as they stood on the side. Everyone. Yang Hui's voice suddenly rose and resounded throughout the entire hall. The close to 1,000 wargods drinking and chatting in the hall all turned their heads. Seeing that it was Yang Hui and the others, they all looked with interest. Actually, wargods without a bit of background wouldn't dare to make such a big fuss in this sort of situation. Let me introduce everyone, laughed Yang Hui loudly. Yang Hui laughed loudly. The one next to me is the new supervisor of Jiang-Nan headquarter city appointed by the head of the Dojo of Limits himself. What? An uproar. The Dojo of Limits is the most powerful martial arts organization on Earth. Just by looking at their organization, aside from the head Hong, who is the strongest fighter on Earth, there are 8 existences surpassing the Wargod level under his 3 guards and 5 investigators. You can say that the elites of the Dojo of Limits are the strongest. For a normal organization, it's already pretty good to have one Wargod in charge of a headquarter city. And the Dojo of Limits has many powerful fighters. To be an examiner in a large headquarter city like Jiang-Nan headquarter city, you have to be someone with a lot of weight even among the advanced level Wargods. Not only that, but the highest level's evaluation of Brother LuoFeng is Invincible Wargod, smiled Yang Hui. Everyone needs to get closer to Brother LuoFeng. After these words were said, the entire hall boiled over. Invincible Wargod? There are only a few hundred advanced level Wargods on Earth. Those at Liao's level are only around 100 people. And those at Phantom Demon Catalan's level are less than 50. As for those who have the right to be called Invincible Wargod, there are only around a dozen people. Of these people, their blade techniques have reached a terrifying level, or their technique or their spiritual force. Basically, they all have their own invincible techniques. Each and every one of them is an important figure on Earth. LuoFeng laughed Yang Hui quietly towards LuoFeng. You won't blame me, right? LuoFeng laughed. He knows the rules. In order for the higher-ups of the Dojo of Limits to control the situation, they usually take the initiative to advertise. For example, the evaluation of Invincible Wargod is a form of publicity. And the evaluation of the highest level of the Dojo of Limits has a lot of credibility in the entire world. Come, let's go sit over there, laughed Yang Hui. LuoFeng, the food and drinks here are definitely delicious, top-notch delicacies, said the other Wargod teachers on the side. In the Palace of Wargods, the Wargods from the Dojo of Limits naturally formed a group, and the entire hall was filled with discussion. Quite a few people looked at LuoFeng in a different light. LuoFeng, Invincible Wargod? His appearance in the Palace of Wargods will definitely let the entire world know about it as soon as possible. In a corner of the hall. LuoFeng, what do you like to eat? Since it's your first time here, it's on me. Yang Hui smiled as he took the menu from the waiter and gave it to LuoFeng. Oh. LuoFeng curiously took it and opened the entire menu. Every type of wine and dish was described in Chinese and English. At the back, the prices were written in Earth, Chinese dollars, US dollars, euros, rubles, Russia, and rupees, India. A cup of wine costs around $100,000? What? Dragon liver costs $880,000. Normal dishes are okay, around 100,000 Chinese dollars each. LuoFeng was shocked. He couldn't help but to smile towards the Wargods beside him. Everyone, this is my first time here in the Palace of Wargods, but I have to say, the food here is quite expensive. The food and wine in the virtual space are all virtual. Who would have thought that the price would be even higher than in the real world? It is, but there's nothing we can do about it. Brad, the Wargod teacher, shook his head and sighed with slightly awkward Chinese. There's only one place in the entire Palace of Wargods that sells food and drinks. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a place to buy it. However, even though it's the food and wine in the virtual space, it's 100% virtual, so it feels the same as eating in real life. If you don't want to fill your stomach and just want to eat, then it's worth it. Normal Wargods can spend over $1 million Chinese dollars just by ordering some food and wine. If it's a sumptuous banquet, it'll probably cost over 10 million Chinese dollars. Only the wealthiest group of people on Earth, the Wargods, can afford to spend like this. Normal rich people probably wouldn't dare to be so extravagant. For Wargods, even if they work for an organization, it's normal for them to earn 5 billion Chinese dollars a year. No matter how expensive the food here is, Wargods can still afford it. For example, LuoFeng, a powerful fighter at the peak of Wargods, killing a Tyrannosaurus, or steel armored dragon level monster is worth around 10 billion. Who cares about food? The taste is indeed. LuoFeng couldn't help but to compliment. In terms of taste, how can the real world compare to the virtual space, laughed Yang Hui. LuoFeng asked everyone, I've always been curious, how many representatives are there in the Palace of Wargods? As long as they're representatives, then their existence is surpassing the Wargod level. 52 representatives in total and 5 chairmen, laughed Ji Tao on the side. 52 representatives, that many? LuoFeng was a bit shocked. Is it a lot? It's God of War, teacher Werther on the side shook his head. Under the 5 chairmen there are only 52 representatives. Based on the world's population of 7 billion, there was less than 1 in 100 million. Among them, there are already 8 of our Dojo of Limits, 3 personal guards and 5 investigators. There's also the Thunder Dojo. Even though they have less people than us, they still have 6 representatives under Thunder God. There are also 7 or 8 counselors who are unwilling to be subordinates and have established a mercenary army. There were also 5 to 6 worshipped by the HR Alliance. In total there are about 26 to 30 counselors. Werther shook his head as he spoke in Mandarin. Then there are the remaining 20 or so counselors from the 5 major countries and 23 base cities. Furthermore, some of the counselors were extremely aloof and lived in seclusion, ignoring any organizations. For example, how many do the 5 major countries get? LuoFeng understood. The Dojo of Limits, the Thunder Dojo, the Mercenaries, and the HR Alliance made up more than half of the council members. Countries that are truly loyal to their country like China have 3 or 4 counselors. That's not bad, laughed Yang Hui. Of course, a country's power cannot be underestimated. Yang Hui laughed. Of course, a country's power can't be underestimated. For example, our Dojo of Limits investigator is a Chinese citizen. Even though we belong to the Dojo of Limits in name, if China asks for help, we'll still help. LuoFeng nodded. A representative may be worshipped by the HR Alliance or a mercenary army, but that doesn't mean they won't help their country in times of need. After all, it's their country. So on the surface, a powerful country only has 3 or 4 counselors. But unknowingly, a powerful country can easily gather 7 or 8 counselors. LuoFeng, how about we go to the Palace of Wargods market later? The items in the Palace of Wargods are much cheaper than the ones outside, suggested Yang Hui. LuoFeng's heart skipped a beat as he said, there's an auction house here, right? Of course there is. Ji Tao held a glass of wine on the side as he said excitedly, the monthly auction is quite interesting. Over 90% of the Wargods in the world will come. You have to know. No matter how big the auction house is, it's hard to gather all the powers in the world. Only the Palace of Wargods can do it. LuoFeng nodded. All the headquarter cities, especially the continents, are separated by oceans. The only way to get around is by commercial planes, which is troublesome. The Wargod Palace was a place where experts from all over the world gathered together. Auctioning here is the most effective. That's why there are many special items. Yang Hui explained, we can also put things up for auction, but there are conditions. The lowest value of the auction item is 1 billion Chinese dollars, and there is no upper limit. Is there an elixir of life? LuoFeng asked directly. In the first 7 months of this year, life water has been available for 5 months, Yang Hui introduced. If I remember correctly, there will be life water in this month's auction as well. LuoFeng was overjoyed, followed by doubt. So much life water? Didn't the American government want to show that the water of life was scarce? Why is the American government auctioning so much life water? Asked LuoFeng curiously. The water of life is precious only in the outside world. Yang Hui smiled disdainfully. In the second half of this year, there will be an open auction for all martial artists. There was only one portion of life water. But this is the Palace of Wargods. There are large amounts of items being auctioned in the Palace of Wargods every month. Items worth billions or even tens of billions are everywhere. If the American government only sells one portion of life water a year, how much money would they make? The outside world doesn't know about the auction in the Palace of Wargods. If they sell more, wouldn't they make more money? Laughed Yang Hui. How much did the previous auctions cost? Asked LuoFeng. The starting price is 10 billion Chinese dollars, and the final winning price is around 20 billion Chinese dollars per portion, laughed Yang Hui. Then the open auction might be able to sell for 30 billion. But no one in the Palace of Wargods is dumb. No one will buy it if it's any more expensive. LuoFeng was secretly happy. Different social circles have different things. The Palace of Wargods gathers all the Wargods on Earth, so it is indeed a huge consumer market. For example, if the American government wants to use the life water to make a lot of money, they just have to sell it in the Palace of Wargods. When is the auction this month? Asked LuoFeng. There's still a few days left. It'll be auctioned on August 15th, said Yang Hui. This auction happens once a month on the 15th of every month. August 15th. His brother can finally stand up. There's only a few more days left. In the lobby of the Palace of Wargods, people would occasionally come down the stairs. Which one is LuoFeng? An old man with white hair walked to a group of friends and sat down as he asked quietly. In the south, sitting with Yang Hui and the others, a strong bald man said in a low voice. See? Those Wargods from the Dojo of Limits are all talking to that LuoFeng. Ever since LuoFeng was exposed, people from all over immediately notified their own people. That young man. The old man with white hair looked carefully and nodded. His aura isn't normal. Look at his eyes. The eyes are the window to the soul. If a normal person's spirit is good, their eyes will be very bright. And if their spirit is low, their eyes will be muddy and dim. And as a spirit reader, when they're hidden, their eyes are as deep as an unfathomable abyss. And when they're angry, just one look is enough to make a weak fighter tremble. So spirit readers usually have a special aura, which is caused by their exceptionally strong spirit. Find a time to get in touch with him, the old man with white hair said quietly. In the future, if we have any difficulties, we can ask him for help. Oh yeah. When I came here, I checked the Dojo of Limits and asked the government for help to find some of LuoFeng's parents' relatives. This is a good chance to get in touch with him. We should also help. Okay. The other fighters nodded. With LuoFeng's help, many things in our 11th division will be much easier, The old man with white hair let out a smile. Luo Feng was evaluated as an invincible wargod by the highest level of the Dojo of Limits. This news spread extremely quickly. Li Yao and Vanina, who were far away in Europe, were also notified by their friends. In the lobby of a quiet villa, Li Yao and Vanina were quietly waiting. "Will that senior see us?" Vanina said quietly. Definitely, Li Yao's gaze was cold as he stood there. Vanina sighed as she saw this. Ever since the battle on Misty Island, Li Yao has been drinking like crazy and hysterical. After he sobered up, Li Yao sank into hatred and was always thinking about revenge. Even the way he looks at people makes them feel fear. But they don't have the ability to kill Luo Feng. "You too." An old man wearing a suit said coldly, "The master is upstairs waiting for you." Li Yao and Vanina's spirits shook. After that, they went up the stairs to the second floor. The old man in the suit said coldly, "Follow me." He directly brought the two of them to a quiet room. After opening the door, the old man in the suit silently walked away. Li Yao and Vanina both took a deep breath before entering. The quiet room was empty. There was only the faint fragrance of sandalwood in the quiet room. A white-haired old man was sitting cross-legged in the quiet room. His long hair had already reached his waist, and his entire body was like a piece of dead wood, without any trace of vitality. Senior Li Yao bowed. Representative Yen Vanina also bowed. "Sit." A low voice carried over. The old man with white hair opened his eyes and looked at Li Yao and Vanina. This old man's eyes were cloudy, as if he was an old man who was about to die. He didn't have the aura of a powerful fighter at all. However, Li Yao and Vanina didn't dare to be slow at all. Li Yao directly kneeled on the ground and fiercely kowtowed as tears flowed down his face. "Little vulture, what's going on? What made you cry?" The old man was very calm. "Senior." Li Yao clenched his teeth and said in a low voice, "My only son was killed by a young man named Luo Feng. I want revenge for my son. However, I, Li Yao, am useless. This Luo Feng already has the power of an invincible wargod. I'm not his opponent at all. But my son." Li Yao's fists were tightly clenched. His fingers dug into his palms and his entire body was slightly shaking. "My parents died when I was young, so I don't have any relatives. I don't care about anything else in the world but my son." Vulture Li Yao's voice started shaking. He was very cruel, earning him the nickname Vulture. That was also because of the special experiences he had during the Grand Nirvana period, which made him cruel and selfish. However, deep in his heart he desperately longed for his family, his only son, his only obsession. After 20 years of nurturing, that feeling has already entered his heart. The more cruel, selfish and cold a person is, the crazier they will be when they value a relationship. Because this is their only obsession. "I beg, Senior, to kill this Luo Feng. I am willing to be your servant for the rest of my life to repay you." Li Yao kowtowed and buried his head on the ground. The old man silently looked at Li Yao. Li Yao just buried his head on the ground and waited for the old man's reply. Vanina, who was on the side, also kept kowtowing. "You and I are friends. Speak. Who is this Luo Feng?" said the old man in a low voice. Li Yao's head was still buried in the ground as he replied. "Luo Feng, peak of the advanced level Wargod level spirit reader, 19 years old, from Jiang-Nan headquarter city, Yangzhou City. Right now, he's one of the upper echelons of the Dojo of Limits and was appointed as the examiner of Jiang-Nan headquarter city." The old man slightly frowned. "I can't help you," said the old man in a low voice. Li Yao fiercely raised his head and looked at the old man in disbelief. In his heart, this was the last straw. He and this powerful fighter experienced the Grand Nirvana period together, so they have a special relationship. Li Yao is a selfish, cruel and arrogant person, so he's never begged this senior like this before. Because of Hong? Li Yao couldn't help but to ask. Yes, the old man didn't hesitate at all. Even though he's very powerful and even fought for the position of chairman before, he failed. However, no one on earth is Hong's opponent. Hong is a god high above, looking down on all powerful fighters. Maybe only the second chairman, Thunder God, is a bit weaker than Hong. The other three chairmen don't even have the courage to attack Hong, let alone Yen Hai. Even though he has a special relationship with Li Yao, he wouldn't go so far as to offend Hong. A 19-year-old invincible wargod, even an idiot can guess how important Hong is to him. Li Yao's fists were clenched so tight that crackling sounds could be heard. His knuckles were pale and fresh blood was flowing out of his palms. He stared at the old man in extreme pain. Seeing this, the old man seemed to have seen the crazy youth from back then during the Grand Nirvana period and sighed in his heart. "You want to kill Luo Feng even at the cost of your life?" said the old man in a low voice. "Yes," Li Yao's voice was determined. "Then break through to the Wargod level and become an existence surpassing the Wargod level," said the old man indifferently. "That way you'll have a chance to kill him. Of course, you'll have to face the wrath of Hong. Maybe Hong values talent and will let you live. But maybe he'll kill you out of anger." Li Yao's eyes were determined. "Please guide me, senior. This is my miscellaneous cultivation notes. It contains my cultivation methods and at the same time, it also contains my experience in breaking through." The old man took out a handwritten book from his bosom. "I hope it can be of help to you." He tossed it over. Li Yao caught it. "Remember? Break through and become an existence surpassing the Wargod level. The key is your spirit and willpower." The old man closed his eyes. "You guys go." Li Yao and Vanina both kowtowed in gratitude and left.